To the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, July the 19th. We have Alderman Addy and Alderman Bailey attending via Teams. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is adopt the agenda, and I have a rather lengthy list of changes to the agenda. So if you'll kind of bear with me here. On the consent agenda, I'm going to ask you to add request permission to hire an employee in the municipal court department. Also, request permission to hire seasonal employees in Environmental Services Department. Ask you to add request permission to hire 2 part-time employees at the Animal Resource Center. I'm going to ask you to approve a lateral transfer from the street department to the city shop, and ask you to allow us to request permission for 2 officers, OPD officers, to attend the NCI Suicide Calls course on August 2nd in Senatobia at an estimated cost of $300. So those are all consent agenda additions. I will ask you to add we'll do it at 7A, to request permission for the Animal Resource Center to apply for the Better Cities for Pets grant. And then at 7B, I would ask you to add grant permission for code enforcement to have grass cut at 627 Piedmont for the amount of $250. And if you would change item 21 from adjourning to recess to meet at 2:00 p.m. on Tuesday, August 2nd, we will have another budget meeting. And if you will remove number 10 from your agenda, we'll postpone that until our next meeting. Okay, that's a lot of changes. Are there any others, Ashley? Did I miss anything?
No, ma'am, that's all I had.
All right, so with all of those changes, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda for the meeting?
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
We have a very short mayor's report tonight because we have spent all day, every day for 2 weeks on the budget. We have been in budget meetings, and that is something that is very time consuming, and it's also, though, a great time for us to reevaluate with all of our department heads kind of where we're headed and what our goals are. This year, we are really focusing on trying to improve our salaries for all of our city employees, and so you will hear more about that in the coming months as we start to adopt portions of that budget. We do have one vacancy that I want to announce on the Historic Preservation Commission, and if anyone is interested in serving on the Historic Preservation Commission, you can send your letters of interest to cityhall@oxfordms.net. So that is it for a mayor's report tonight. I would ask you to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on July 5th, the recess meeting on July the 11th, the recess meeting on July 12th, and the recess meeting on July 14th.
Motion to approve.
Motion made.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I would ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'll ask you to consider the consent agenda with that lengthy list of additions that I announced before.
Motion to accept consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Allgood, do have a public hearing and consideration of the MEMA District 2 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Yeah, several weeks ago, I had sent you a section of the plan that dealt with Lafayette County and the city of Oxford. The plan's about 2,000 pages long for you to review. The state.
We read every word.
You slept real good.
That's right. Only took me 6 months.
We update every 5 years, so it updates our mitigation strategy. And this is the plan that we have to adopt to receive mitigation funds through the hazard mitigation grant program and everything. It's been open for the past week to public comment.
Will you make sure your mic's on?
Yeah, It's been open for the past week for public comment. We have had no public comments on it. I don't know if anyone from the board has received any public comments, but this is the public hearing and the adoption of the plan if you agree to adopt it.
All right, well, since this is a public hearing, I would welcome anyone who is here to speak on this to come forward. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the MEMA District 2 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan? All right, hearing none. If any board members have any questions or comments?
No.
If not, could I entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. We added at 7A to request permission for the Animal Resource Center to apply for the Better Cities for Pets grant. Kelly's here if you have any questions, but I don't know that anyone would be opposed to us applying for a grant, so
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. And now I ask you to grant permission for code enforcement to have the grass cut at 627 Piedmont for the amount of $250, and that you have an attachment there.
So moved.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Chief McCutcheon, request permission to approve a parade assembly permit for Lindsay Hemphill to host a 5K walk run on August the 13th from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Yes, ma'am. So this will go from North Lamar, Price Street, Sorority Road, University Avenue. It's a traditional route we've used before. We have no issues with it.
All right.
Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Request permission to advertise for bids for traffic control services at both public schools.
So the last couple of years, we have signed a contract with Wood Security that did traffic services in the morning and the afternoon. They've requested to pull out, so we're just asking to be able to bid that out for another company.
All right.
Motion made.
Second.
All right, with a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Third reading and vote for proposed ordinance to rezone approximately 22.21 acres for case 2867 Andrew Ross for the Pat Patterson Parkway PUD from neighborhood residential and traditional neighborhood business to planned unit development for property located between Anchorage Road and Pat Patterson Parkway, being further identified as PPINs 39601 and 39602. Ben.
Yes, ma'am. It's exactly as we have presented it at the last two meetings. We've had no proposed modifications. We've not received any additional comment.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Ben, or anybody received any comments?
I move we accept the rezoning.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is to consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of case 2862 Walker & Walker Enterprises for a site plan approval for South Grove for property located at South Lamar and County Road 322, being further identified as PPINs 10401 and 10356. For this appeal, we will let Mr. Raquette kind of set the stage for what we are considering, and then we will let the person appealing, Ms. Christina Davis, speak after that.
Great. The appeal of the
Mayor,
notice.
I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
Okay. Alderman Bailey recuses himself.
Thank you. The appeal of the noted site plan is for property located on South Lamar and County Road 322. It's immediately south of the Windsor Falls neighborhood, and it's being heard at the request of a nearby resident, Ms. Davis, Christina Davis, who's here with us. The Planning Commission heard this request on June 13th. It was case 2862. All members of the commission were present for this item, and Commissioner Murphy did recuse himself. A motion, the site plan itself is It's on about 32 and a half acres roughly. The property has 3 different zoning districts: traditional neighborhood business, neighborhood residential, and traditional suburban residential. The applicant proposed a mixed type of residential development. It consists of 81 detached residential units and 112 attached in duplex, triplex, and quadplex format. The ownership structure for this site will be in a residential common interest development and similar to a condominium ownership. The development is also the subject of 2868, which is a request for preliminary and final plat subdivision. The Planning Commission made a motion to, and taking a step back, the development did not propose any connections into the Windsor Falls neighborhood. However, staff did have a requirement to extend the road that's already there in that Windsor Falls neighborhood into this development to provide connectivity as our land development code does require. The Planning Commission did make a motion to approve this without that requirement after hearing considerable discussion from Windsor Falls residents. The motion was seconded, and this site plan was approved with a 6-0 vote by the commission. And Ms. Davis objected to, or filed a request to appeal this site plan on June 24th. I did provide a copy of her letter, her email, her letter, and then all the additional documentation that she provided. The summary of discussion from the Planning Commission meeting is included in here. We provided a link to the meeting, and I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Davis unless you have any other questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Ben?
So what was the vote? It was 6-0?
It was 6-0, without that requirement to tie into Windsor Falls.
But it wasn't originally tied into Windsor Falls.
It was not proposed by the developer. It was a requirement by staff to connect.
But that requirement was removed, and then it passed 6-0.
Did staff have a problem when it was removed?
That's the way it was, that was the way it was approved, and, I mean,
Okay.
it's okay.
Can I say one thing
Yes.
before Ms. Davis speaks? Ben, was the connectivity with Windsor Falls, though, that was written into the old Windsor Fall approval, correct? It reserved connectivity to this development down the road, or the potential, the area for that road to connect.
Yeah, at that time, Windsor Falls had a second phase that was going to go onto this particular property, and so the site plan at that time showed city streets that would, traverse through this site.
So it would have been part of Windsor, it would have been another part of Windsor Falls, not necessarily another.
Originally.
Right, not necessarily another. Okay.
Yeah, and all I'm getting at is y'all can handle this however you want. You can accept, with the Planning Commission, they've done 2 things here. What Ms. Davis is appealing is the site plan. The site plan is dependent on the subdivision plat being approved, which is the next item on your agenda. If you may grant her appeal, you can deny her appeal, you can grant it with the conditions they originally recommended, or you can grant it as recommended by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's dropping of the connectivity does not bind you to drop the connectivity. You can still accept that recommendation.
Okay. All right.
So we can still accept that, okay.
Yes, that's right. Their recommendation doesn't bind you to any of those.
Although I would hate to do something like that with no one from Windsor Falls, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so Ms. Davis, I know, is joining us via Teams. Are you there, Christina?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Your picture went away, so your picture went away, so I was making sure. The board, as Ben stated, has received your letter of appeal and all of the documents that you sent. They've received a summary of the Planning Commission's comments, as well as each was provided a link to that Planning Commission meeting. So I'm just telling you that there's no need to rebuild all of that case. I know that you have given us a document where you state the reasons for your appeal, and so if you want to flesh out any of those reasons or make some comments about that, I would invite you to, if you would limit your comments to about 10 minutes, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. As I stated at the Planning Commission meeting, and again, with just one statement, we are not opposed to the development of this property in a responsible way that will, that the road infrastructure that is in place or that can be improved by the city would be able to support. I shouldn't say that last statement. That my contention is that the road infrastructure that is present and does not support the density of the subdivision. There are some traffic study discrepancies between what was offered by the Walker and Walker, and specifically that and the 2017 commissioned traffic study by the city, and we believe that the Planning Commission utilized Walker and Walker's traffic study, and which does not take into consideration the impact of the additional 400 to 600 cars that this development at its proposed state would be adding to South Lamar. And so I wondered if anybody, first of all, has any questions about the concerns that were presented and that you may have, you have had an opportunity to review.
Does anybody have questions for Ms. Davis? I know her email was very thorough and she fleshed out a lot of her concerns, but I know she's willing to answer any questions if anybody on the board has any. We've got 3 members attending via Teams, so if you all have questions, just chime in. I can't hear you, Christina.
Oh. I didn't hear any questions, so I'll continue with that.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
The position that we have is that the impact, there has not been an impact study on all of South Lamar from Highway 6 to Highway 7 on the south end of South Lamar. That accurately depicts what has already transpired since the 2017 traffic study was made, and the development that has transpired, and that is an important part of the decision that's being made that wasn't provided to the Planning Commission. And in addition to that, there is, as I mentioned before, a discrepancy in the fact that a key road that is on the site plan was not included in the traffic study offered by Walker and Walker. And so, and that is key because it is at the top of the crest of the hill and in a curve, and with already a site line problem. And so we believe that needs to be improved, or that needs to be addressed before the Planning Commission so that they can make an informed decision as to the impact on the citizens that have already invested in their lives and their businesses on South Lamar from the subdivision all the way to Highway 6. And so
I'm sorry, Christina, your phone's cutting out.
My phone's cutting out. Can you hear me if I talk louder?
Yes.
Or is it just cutting out?
Yes, that's better.
Traveling.
It's kind of freezing up on you.
Okay. I'm sorry. We're doing the best we can with this. We are actually traveling from a hospital in Virginia back to the house. So I guess we'll just have to pull over so that I can finish that, please. Okay. So the differences, the differences in the number of entrances and exits, as I just mentioned, on South Lamar, is a key interest because, and there has been accidents that have happened already without adding that particular key road right beside the church entrance and exit, the south church entrance and exit. And so we believe that the Planning Commission did not have a full and complete and correct report to base their decision on, and that should be included or rectified. Not all of the subdivisions, as was pointed out in my document, along South Grove property were studied in the PE traffic study. Mockingbird, the entrances and exits from Mockingbird and from Whippoorwill were not included, and this also, of course, impacts, the study as not impacts, but affects the accuracy of the study, and we believe that should be corrected and offered to the Planning Commission for their consideration in whether or not this is an appropriate, the density of this property is proposed property is appropriate for this particular location. And then additionally, there is no access to Highway 7 at all. There is access to County Road.
We lost you again, Christina.
It is a road infrastructure. Can you hear me now? They lost me. It is a road. We're trying to find a spot.
Okay, we can hear you right this second. We can hear you right this second.
We're in a parking lot. Here's I don't know where it was. Oh, County Road 322 is a 16-foot wide county lane. Two cars passing each other will not be able to pass each other without going on into the grass. And
Where is this? This talking about
It's County Road 322
322.
that runs between Highway 7 and South Lamar
right. She
is
said
the road that she's referring to.
that was part of the traffic.
And that's part of the. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Christina, your phone's freezing up.
I'm going to keep talking and then see if it opens up again. I don't know what else to do. I'm doing the.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. There's from the South Grove property. Offers offered
What do you want me to tell her, Janice?
Am I frozen again?
Hey, Christina, Dr. Antonow is here, and she asked if you would like for her to take over for you.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Dr. Antonow, if you'd like to come up. Of course, yes.
They had a very serious family emergency and had to yesterday drive to Roanoke
Oh, no.
And they have been at the hospital, and they couldn't connect at the hospital, and they just left the hospital to try to do it in the car. So I hate it, but all I have is just her outline. I don't have any of the other documentation, but I think I can kind of fill in the blanks. I wanted to explain about the exits. That's what I have, yeah. That she was talking about that did not appear on the traffic study that Walker and Walker did. One of them, the one that's missing from the traffic study, is just south of the driveway for the church that's there. And that is the worst place for sight line. If anybody takes a ride there, you can go to that south exit and you really can't see what's coming. There have been several accidents there. And that was just not even included in the traffic study. It was like there was not a driveway there. There are 19 homes that are just opposite this development on South Lamar, that front on South Lamar. Those were not taken into consideration in the traffic study. People have to back out of those houses. Okay, just give me a second. All right, County Road 322 is the only exit onto Highway 7 other than the people in that development coming out onto South Lamar and then either using Windsor Falls Boulevard or Veterans Drive to get to Highway 7. And what is being requested because of that is a temporary construction easement to Highway 7 while this development is being in the process of being constructed. Nobody's going to use 322. The construction traffic is not going to use 322. And South Lamar, especially in that area, is the main route for garbage trucks from the county and the city. So there's a lot more activity there all day long than people realize. And not having a way for that construction traffic to get to that development other than using South Lamar is going to be a major problem. There's going to be tons of dirt that is going to have to be delivered to that site in order to fill in all the ditches and so on that's there. So they should have a construction easement, and then eventually they need and probably will have a permanent road that leads directly to Highway 7. The density in that southern portion of this development is problematic. There are 190 units. That would be about 400 vehicles using South Lamar every day. If students occupy those units that are duplexes, triplexes, and quads, it'll be more like 600 cars per day. And anybody who thinks that that end of South Lamar can tolerate 600 more cars really has not been in that area at all. The traffic study discrepancy, I know Ms. Davis alluded to that. I don't know if you all could understand what she was saying. The difference between it and the one that was done for Vision 2037 indicates that the level of service now on that portion of South Lamar is better than it was 5 years ago, which is ridiculous. Our traffic study said that it was rated at a D, and their traffic study promoted it to a B, and that any reasonable person would know that that is not possible with the growth in Oxford.
Sounds like my son.
Do you-
Tell me about their grades.
What?
It sounds like my son going from a D to a B.
From a D to a Janice, do you think that has anything to do with Oxford Way relieving some of the traffic? from South Lamar?
There is so much traffic generated now by Oxford Way that
Yeah.
I really don't think so. And it isn't better. I mean, just going out there and driving up and down every day, you can tell it's certainly not better. It's getting worse every day. To clarify mention what Pope was saying, nothing in this appeal is requesting that road, that connector road between Windsor Falls and this development be added back. Everybody's good with it not happening. It would only mean that the people from that development would be going through that neighborhood to get to Highway 7. They would be using Windsor Falls Boulevard, and that certainly is not what was expected. The people in Windsor Falls expected this to be developed as another phase of Windsor Falls, just like their development. I want to mention, and I don't know very much about this because I didn't see it in writing anywhere. Ms. Davis, I think, saw it somewhere, that, Windsor Falls requested that a tree buffer remain between the two developments for privacy, for noise abatement during construction, for dust. And we understand that the developer is planning to clear cut that buffer and plant it with hardwoods, which sounds great if you want to wait 20 years to have a buffer back. What is being proposed is that this be done incrementally, that pine trees be taken down and hardwoods be planted, and then another group of hardwoods come down so that there's always a tree buffer there that will protect the Windsor Falls neighborhood. This appeal, Ms. Davis did it on her own accord. She has been in contact with 5 subdivisions along South Lamar who are all very concerned about this, and it's, of course, Windsor Falls, Ridgeland Heights, South Oaks, Glen Alden, and St. Charles Place. All these neighborhoods are very concerned about the South Lamar traffic. One other issue that isn't specific to this development that needs to be brought out. From the very beginning, this development was not, the public was not aware of it. The developer contacted Windsor Falls. He did not contact any other neighborhoods. He did not contact the church, which has been there for 30 years and is going to be surrounded by houses. Previous proposals for this property, the last one, Will Matthews called a meeting of all the neighborhoods at the conference center, answered our questions, got our input. Prior to that, Kenny Coleman had a meeting at the church with all the surrounding neighborhoods. This development caught everybody off guard. The public notice in the newspaper, I'm probably the only one in the world who reads those public notices, and it just escaped me. Now, maybe if I had still been on the board, I would have known what it was all about, but what it said was, and I'm paraphrasing, but the gist of it was a development, a site plan on County Road 322 and South Lamar. And I looked at that and I knew that there was a little bit of traditional neighborhood business on that corner. And I thought, oh, somebody's proposing some kind of a business there. And then I just didn't pay any more attention to it. I had no idea that it was a 30-acre development of 190 units. The signage was on the corner of County Road 322 in South Lamar. And I think, did Ms. Davis send you a photograph of that signage?
She did.
Okay. I didn't see it. Nobody in South Oaks saw it. Nobody in my neighborhood saw it. When we realized that a development was happening, people went looking for it and found it there. Now, the frontage on that property is hundreds of feet, where you drive by and there's nothing. So that really doesn't have anything to do with this development, but it's certainly something that probably needs to be corrected for the future. And I don't know, Christine, if you can hear me, is there something I forgot?
There's a buffer that we have concern about that runs along Windsor Falls, and the site
Yes.
plan
Janice
does not
did,
include the-
Janice did discuss the buffer.
No, this is a buffer that runs along South Lamar between the bike lane, between the bike lanes on South Lamar and the back lot of Windsor Falls. And we are requesting, and it was requested at the Planning Commission, that buffer be extended along South Lamar and along South Grove. Again, because of the site line, this buffer would add sight line and add to the safety of people that are driving and pedestrians that would be walking on the sidewalk. And we are requesting that the developer include and continue that type of a land buffer,
Yeah, it's not a
with
tree
trees.
buffer.
Again, it was that the reason it was there for Windsor Falls was to help actually protect the future residents there from noise and from other things that come up from going up and down living on a thoroughfare. So that's one of the considerations that we would like to have the Planning Commission understand the necessity of and revisit.
I have nothing else.
Okay.
And thank you, and I apologize
Absolutely.
for being so
Thank you very much, Janice, and
You're welcome,
thank you for your.
Christina. This was really just
Thank you,
last
Mayor
minute for
and
me.
Alderman, for listening. I just want to point out as well that this is a community concern, not just a South Lamar concern. The community of Oxford uses this portion, the portion of South Lamar south of Belk Avenue, because of medical offices that are there and other businesses that are there, of course. 22 counties utilize 120 people a day, patients a day, use the cancer center on Azalea Drive from 22 counties. And what is developed and along South Lamar impacts their ability to navigate that portion. And it's not only for their well-being and, of whatever they're going through with other treatments, and there's a surgical center, et cetera, as well, but also, Oxford is providing this, and so it is incumbent, it would appear, incumbent that we make it as transversable as possible. I think that's the right word. And in addition to that, already proposed in Oxford Farms is a senior living center, which will be independent living for seniors. They will have their cars as well, and these type of things on the southern part of town, we have become accustomed to this being a part of our traveling and up and down South Lamar, and adding the density that has been offered here is just going to increase or decrease the not only the quality of life, but also the well-being, because we have to depend on emergency services as well on the southern part of South Lamar. And once you pass Azalea Drive, the road that, again, road infrastructure will not support, it will delay emergency, particularly ambulance, but response time. And again, the people that are living there have already invested. I know the developer deserves to be able to develop his land, and again, we are not trying to deny him that opportunity. But the city codes say that we are not supposed to develop to the detriment of the surrounding properties. And there are people that have lived 30, 40, and 50 years down South Lamar and along this subdivision, and their investments are in the hands of the planning office and in your hands this evening, and then the planning commission as well. And there is precedence for this. We've already done this several times in Oxford at Oxford Commons, and in improving and requiring the developer to improve the road infrastructure to support the addition of his development. And there are three more, but these are, I believe, sufficient enough reasons to request the alderman to return this decision to the Planning Commission for further consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. All right. Are there questions from the Board of Aldermen, comments from the Board of Aldermen? Obviously, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval, so it would require a motion from the board to overturn it. Did you want to make a comment?
Is there an opportunity?
Okay, sure, yeah.
Good evening, I'm Paul Coscianina with Precision Engineering. I'm here representing the applicant, Walker & Walker. Ms. Davis, I understand, is challenged with her situation here, trying to not be able to be here in person, so I feel for that. But I did want to respond to some of these comments, and there were a lot. But, you know, I'd like to first and foremost say that the project, we've worked hard on this. We coordinated with city engineering and planning. The development, the density is well within code allowable density that's per the zoning that's been in place on this property for quite some time. This will be a quality development. The homes that are directly adjacent to the Windsor Falls development, the homes that are proposed would be similar quality to the homes that are in Windsor Falls, similar price range, I think without question. And I think the transitional use that we propose as it moves to the south toward County Road 322 makes sense with the zoning and with good planning practices. You know, the question about the traffic study, she is correct. I can't deny that there is a slight technicality between the traffic study that we did present and the plan that we ultimately submitted for the city's review and consideration. That drive that is adjacent to the entrance into the existing church was added through a lot of kind of internal discussion and some debate that we had with the planning department, trying to add some additional detached units to the overall property compared to what some of our initial concepts indicated. We tried to kind of back off on some of the attached units and increase the number of detached single-family homes. And in doing that, we ended up adding that connection point. That connection point is not indicated on the traffic study, but I would like to speak to that. The traffic impact study that we've presented, that Buchard Horn prepared for us, a very reputable, knowledgeable traffic engineering firm. We've used them along with some of the other larger traffic engineering firms, Neil Schaefer and others, but Buchard Horn did this study for us, and we feel it's correct and solid. You know, that traffic study, we identified various intersections in the vicinity of the project. Existing city streets to the south, including County Road 322, because it's directly adjacent to our site, and then several intersections to the north of the site, including P Ridge adjacent to the site, and then several intersections to the north of the site. And the projections that we're using from the standard traffic projections that you use for studies like this are really trying to identify levels of service for those existing intersections. We look at what is in place now, and then these projected build-outs through future years, and try to make a determination as to whether there truly is a detrimental impact. So my point being that third access point that we added adjacent to the church, our thought, honestly, as we were going through this process, and our client ultimately directed us to not show this vehicular connection into Windsor Falls, we felt like, even though we did not think that connection to Windsor Falls was necessary, we did think it was smart to have multiple connection points to South Lamar and the existing city streets to try to distribute traffic as efficiently as possible into and out of the site. And that's one of the reasons we showed that third access point. When you look at the projections of traffic and how they impact those off-site intersections that we've studied, from Centerline Road to Windsor Falls Drive to County Road 322 to Pea Ridge, the traffic projection really is not dependent on where those connection points are in South Lamar in this proposed project. It's really how many cars from the site are projected to move north as opposed to south, and some of those are guesses, but they're educated guesses. And that's why we showed that connection point. We felt like it was smart for the project and smart overall long-term. All that being said, if there are concerns about that drive, I don't mind. I've spoken with our client. We can eliminate that drive connection. It would be ultimately just a dead-end connection for those, I think it's about 18 units right there, but it's perhaps not critical. We think it's actually helpful for the project, but perhaps not critical. There were a lot of points that Ms. Davis made in the stand now, and I respect all of those. I mean, I've worked here for a long time in Oxford. We're always trying to do these projects in a way that are consistent with what our clients desire, but also consistent with city zoning and land development code. And in this case, I think we're complying with all those. I'll real quickly say just a couple of things about the buffers that were mentioned. There is an existing sort of what I would describe as sort of scrub pine buffer along the slope on the north side of this property that our client owns that's adjacent to Windsor Falls. They do desire to clear that and to replace it with a more organized planting of hardwoods that we think long-term will be a much higher quality for the residents of this project on South Grove as well as the neighbors there in Windsor Falls. That is what our client's proposing, again, fully within requirements of the land development code. In fact, part of that is to meet the requirements of the land development code for tree mitigation on the site. And there was a mention about the existing tree buffer that's along Windsor Falls between South Lamar and the existing homes in Windsor Falls. That's property that our client doesn't control or own. They're not going to do anything with that property. But you know, as you continue down South Lamar adjacent to the South Grove property, our intent is to clear most of the trees along that frontage and replace those with, again, more organized, kind of planned planting in compliance with city code.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kashnina?
I have a question for Rihanna. Rihanna, explain to me the change in the level of service from the 2035 or the projections of 2035 as an F to now projecting it lesser.
Absolutely. So when the city commissioned our traffic study as part of our Vision 2037 plan, that study was based on a software and a methodology for large-scale analysis. So that's a program, it's used by MDOT for large-scale planning when you're looking at large areas, and that study was based on our land use, our zoning, or projected zoning. It also was looking at into the future to 2035 for some of it. It did identify now, particularly the section between the square and Highway 6, that was at a lower level of service. The studies that we use for our traffic impact studies for our site developments are based on the current conditions. So we require them to base that on the existing traffic right now, and then we also require them to base that on the existing development right now. If we know that a development is coming online and it's pending, it's approved, then we will tell them you have to include that, but we don't require projections about land use and zoning in our studies that we're doing for site plans, because that gets very much into the unknown, and that gets into, once you start doing that, it becomes a question of what are you requiring this developer to do based on something that may never happen. So the study that we have for this development is based on the actual traffic counts now, and then it's also based on, there's a standard projection rate. So you're saying that traffic is growing in Oxford, we use a 4% growth rate because we've learned that we're growing faster than the 2% that's kind of the industry standard, but you're looking at that projection to say, in a few years' time, what are we looking at? And so that's how we look at ours. This study is based on those intersections, and I did require them to go out further. When a traffic study is required, we tell them, and all of the traffic engineers will call me and say, what are we gonna have to do? Because they know that, number one, if they don't meet the criteria that I'm asking for, then I won't accept their study, or I'll make them go back and redo it. And so we went a little further out to try to get out further, but there is a limit, and Pope can speak to that more. There's a limit on how far out we can go, because we can't require improvements outside of their property. So we can't require this development to make improvements at the roundabouts at South Lamar. We can't legally do that. And so we're not going to require the traffic study, to that point. So I don't know if I think I answered the question.
That's fair enough. You were satisfied with what was, obviously you submitted it to the Planning Commission for consideration.
I was, and I will also, just to clarify about the level of service. So when you say a level of service F, it's just like a grading system where F is the worst. But level of service F, it's based on the capacity of the roadway and the amount of delay that people experience. So if you think about, if you're on Jackson Avenue on a game Friday and traffic's sitting still, but you're even trying to make a turn out of a side street, that's a level of service F idea. The square between North Lamar, between Jefferson and University, it runs to a D and an F a lot of times when we get a lot of heavy traffic, because everybody's just moving slowly and it's hard to get in to traffic. A level of service B is I think appropriate for South Lamar for the most part, particularly as you get south of Highway 6 and of that area that's so congested, because traffic is generally free-flowing. There is some delay there, but it's not it feels extensive. And I sat there today, to make a left. When you're waiting somewhere 30 seconds to make a turn, even a minute, it feels like forever. But from a traffic standpoint, it's not.
So I guess this might be more for Ben or you, but when we approve this land development code, which I'm sure is what the Planning Commission goes by, do we look at, Ben, when we approve what they actually can do here, because that's what they did it by our code, do we look at the traffic then?
Yeah, as part of that, I think for this specific site,
Well, any site, not necessarily this. I mean, if we're approving something as a TMB or as something else, I mean.
Just from the zoning standpoint, no, we evaluate that at the time of the development.
Okay. I know we don't do studies. I just meant, is traffic come into our zoning at all of different, of how we're zoning different pieces of land?
I think you see less intense uses, so you may not have like a suburban zoning in an area that doesn't have the road infrastructure that could support it. So that's why you wind up seeing more traditional neighborhood business throughout, these areas.
Okay.
Ben, on as far as the density wise, this development and further developments on South Lamar, are you just considering, I understand the zoning, I understand what you consider is, look, you can put a density of A in this particular zoning condition, but is there any thought about the impact of South Lamar in the future? Or is it just, you met this requirement for this zone, your density is, I think this density is, it was stated, Paul stated it was less than he could do.
That's right.
And that's what you consider?
Well, I mean, I think we do, and I think Mr. Cushing's comments earlier about how we were pushing to modify the site, they had proposed in earlier iterations, they had proposed more duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, and so we worked with them to try and lessen some of that intensity to provide more single-family detached homes. Especially you'll see them along South Lamar and just dispersed, in different areas of the site. To that point, they're proposing about 190 units, and my calculations showed that they could be around 235 units on the site. So, they're certainly below, the density. They're not at, going 100 miles an hour. They're somewhere, less than that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? All right, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to grant the appeal, to send it back to planning to consider this third turn that was added and revise the traffic study, considering that, understanding the comments from Paul, but I would like to send it back, and is also to study the possibility of the buffer on South Lamar to improve visibility and what it would look like, or what it would, considering traffic-wise, with the elimination of that third exit. I guess third exit. Yes.
So is what Paul just said that they would be willing to do not the same thing you're asking them to send it back for?
I mean, if there's going, but they've got the next item is to approve the final plat. Now, if that's amended to eliminate that turn or the northernmost turn, Paul, we right, and you can nod your head yes or no. Paul, we right, yeah, that's the northernmost turn, right?
It's the central.
Central, okay, the central turn. The one right adjacent to the church. Okay, the central turn, okay.
And so you're saying that you're asking that they study it with
All
that
three
turn
turns
included?
considered, yeah, and see if it changes.
Although Paul said that they're willing to eliminate that turn as well, so, okay. All right, so we have a motion to send it back to the Planning Commission with the different
Updated traffic
considerations.
study and consideration of the buffer along South Lamar, as described by Ms. Davis, meaning an extra allowance for traffic or view of traffic.
Is it right, and I'm maybe out of school here, but can the board not approve an appeal, but say that per the site plan approval must include, just like you were saying, that the board could approve the site plan with the connector road to Windsor Falls, even though the Planning Commission could not? Could the board approve this site plan with the buffer that you're talking about asking the Planning Commission to consider? I'm just asking the question.
I don't know how that changes the site plan, though.
Oh,
That's
okay.
my,
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know what I'm talking about there, but,
I think the buffer is difficult.
yeah.
That's difficult.
okay. All right, that answers that.
But we could,
You could, I think,
approve it without that entranceway he's talking about.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the board feels that that's critical, we can. We really don't think that's a detriment to South Lamar. In fact, I think it's better to have more ways for vehicles to enter and exit the property.
Well, not being traffic engineers, I kind of want to hear more from Rihanna or Ben if we're going to talk about eliminating any entrances or exits to something.
Yeah,
It's
it's not considered in the traffic study, so it's hard to comment on it, but.
Yeah.
How about, has any sight line, I know they're,
I actually meant to speak to that as well.
okay, thank you.
We have looked at the sight line, and honestly, it is marginal. One of the reasons that I'm sort of offering up to reconsider that, I mean, I'd like to look at it a little closer. I think it does meet the criteria, but it is, you know.
It's a
very
slippery
tight.
slope.
It's very tight, right, and just as we're not trying to push the density on the overall plan for the development, we typically don't try to push the threshold of any code requirement if we can help it, especially if there's safety involved. So,
Well, and we have a motion on the floor. I shouldn't have added ideas once you've made a motion. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? All right, if there is no second, then the motion dies for lack of a second. All right, we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is to request approval of a preliminary and final plat for case 2868, Walker and Walker Enterprises for South Grove subdivision for property located at South Lamar and County Road 322, being further identified as PPINs 10401 and 10356.
Yes, ma'am. Same piece of property that we've been discussing. The applicant is requesting to create a one-lot subdivision. The lot will measure about 32.5 acres, 32.4 acres. It is obviously the subject of what we were just discussing. Engineering did provide technical comments, and in particular, they requested the proposed connection to Windsor Falls. The Planning Commission, in their consideration, after much discussion, they approved this subdivision without the requirement to connect to Windsor Falls. Staff did receive an objection from Ms. Davis related to this request. Staff recommended approval of the preliminary and final plat with all of the conditions that were listed in the staff report. However, the Planning Commission recommended approval without condition 3. So that's what's before you. It's a one-lot subdivision. It will measure 32.5 acres roughly.
Motion made to approve.
I'll second, but before I second, is there anything we can do in the motion where they actually look at the third entrance? I mean, where it's approved, but they can still decide later which one, whether they think that it's a safe entrance?
Are you speaking to the entrance that we were just talking about in the center of the property?
The central one.
Yeah. And so in this instance, we're just looking at the subdivision. We're not even looking at the
motion, but is it?
The subdivision's not even looking at the roads.
Yeah, you can make a modification to it at this point, but to make it dependent, I mean, I guess you could put a very specific condition, John, that what you're approving shall be subject to a final approval
By our city engineers or
by the
something?
city engineer within the next 7 days.
Okay, I second.
And if Paul comes back and says, we just don't want to do it, because you don't have the final word, the recommendation that came up from the Planning Commission doesn't preclude y'all from making the modification that your engineer decides is the appropriate modification. But Bart, if y'all don't want that condition hanging out there, say that.
I mean, I trust them to tell us what they think.
It's not a study.
I know it is, y'all say you come to that change or not, and that would be a huge change, and y'all are acknowledging that it'll be subject to the engineering change within the next 7 days.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
No.
All right, request approval of a preliminary and final plat for case 2877, Josh White, for 1309 North Lamar subdivision for property located at 1309 North Lamar Boulevard, being further identified as PPIN 5075.
So this is a subdivision that will create 2 lots.
Ms. Davis, would you mind muting your microphone, please?
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is a subdivision that will create 2 lots at the properties where the old Lamar Lounge, Gus's Fried Chicken was. It'll create 2 lots. Lot 1 will encompass the old Lamar Lounge and Gus's Fried Chicken building with the parking lot, and that will measure about, I don't know, 7/10 of an acre. Lot 2 will measure about 4.41 acres. Engineering provided comments and related to access infrastructure and stormwater, and the Planning Commission recommended approval with the conditions that are listed in your report, and all
I
of
move
which
we approve.
are satisfied. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Request permission to adopt the revised minutes for the Board of Alderman recess meeting on December the 5th, 2013.
Yes, ma'am. So last week, Bart and Rihanna, y'all chime in if I get something wrong. We were looking for a resolution for a subdivision that we all knew had been approved. We went to the minutes, and it appeared to be that there was a portion of the minutes that was not included when the minutes were put into the book. So the board speaks through its minutes. So if we couldn't find it, it was not there, it appeared that it had not happened. I actually went to our storage unit, found the previous city clerk's board packet, found her notes where it did actually, the resolution was passed. I did include that as a attachment on the board pack, the approved resolution, and her notes for her, for the meeting that night, along with the minutes that are in the book and my proposed revision. So this is just making sure that our minutes reflect what the board meant to do that night in their meeting, or that day in their meeting. So, yes. No, it was at OUT. It was at OUT at the ribbon cutting. Yeah. But you can kind of look at the minutes that are in the book, and you can kind of tell where something's missing. So if approved, I would go back to the minute book and attach this revision so that for perpetuity, anyone going back can see that it's been corrected.
All right.
Motion to approve. What?
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, request permission to approve a list of budget reallocations and amendments.
Yes, you have attached to your board packet a short list of mostly reallocations. There are a couple of additions to departments, but for the most part, they are net zero changes, getting a little bit of housekeeping for the budget.
Net zero, motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, consider bids received for the Brittany Woods Water Improvement Project. Rihanna.
Thank you. We received bids for this project on Wednesday, July 13th. We had 3 bids. The lowest and best bid was from Eubanks Construction. It was in the amount of $2,808,000, $2,808,064.10. It did exceed the amount budgeted in the current fiscal year, but it's by an allowable amount, and it is less than what has been budgeted for the fiscal year that begins October 1. So there are funds the board has allocated for this project. I just wanted to note that when we considered the budget for this year, we considered the price escalations that we've seen for COVID, and this project came in. There was an error in another bid that was received, a mathematical error, and I just note that for the record. So this project is to improve our water mains within the Brittany Woods subdivision following annexation, and I would recommend acceptance of the bid from Eubanks Construction.
Move.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Excited to get that started. Consider bids received for the external water connection project.
Yes, this is a project that we came to you this year. This was identified as a need in the risk and resiliency assessment that Oxford Utilities had completed. That was a requirement from the federal government that came down to complete that assessment. And the need for these meters and post indicators at those meter locations was identified. We received bids on July 13th. We received 2 bids. The lowest and best bid was from Eubanks Construction, and this project, we had a base bid. Their bid for that was $147,000, and then there was an add alternate to install meters and post indicators on University, for the University of Mississippi. And the reason those were alternates was because at the time of our bids, we had not yet reached an agreement with the university regarding the location of those meters, because we were trying not to negatively impact landscaping and coordinate with them. So this project will be budgeted, it's budgeted for the coming fiscal year as well, and I would recommend award of the base bid and the alternate to Eubanks Construction in the amount of $147,000 for the base bid and $95,500 for the add alternate items.
So moved.
All in favor?
No.
Any opposed? Consider a lease agreement for 1308 North Lamar LLC for the office space for our Stronger Together Oxford program.
This past year, we exercised the final year of our 5-year, 3-year with 2-year option lease for the spaces occupied by Volunteer Oxford, or the Community Volunteer Hub, which used to be RSVP. This would give us 3 years at that location. Hopefully by that time, we've got our plans in place for a more permanent location. Pope did just grab me and tell me that if you do approve, it is with exception to the number 14, the indemnity provision, and
There's some attorney fee provisions in 2 or 3 places, and we can't agree to pay attorney's fees if there's a dispute. So those all have to come out.
so subject to council review.
Second.
Subject to council's review. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I would ask the board to consider an executive session.
Move and consider executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? The board will now consider an executive session.